people who we had, again, gone to the same school, gone to the same church, began, chasing us from our homes with machetes, with clubs, with nail-studded clubs, with spears, saying that we were cockroaches, and all Tutsis were cockroaches, and all Tutsis deserve to be exterminated.
We lived as neighbors, and for children, for us, you will play with your neighbors. It's a very community-oriented country, so there were no gates between homes. So you will, in the neighborhood, in a village, you will play with all the kids. For children, you really didn't understand. I didn't understand the difference between the Hutus and Tutsis. The adults knew, and they would tell you which homes you should never go to, but they wouldn't tell you why.
Hutus and Tutsis were, lending each other, daily items like salt, like sugar. So there was, a bit of sharing and coexisting. That's why when the genocide began and our Hutu neighbors started, chasing us with machetes, it was a huge shock to some level, because we had believed that these people were, our neighbors, and that they were our friends.
El 7 de abril se cumplen 30 años del día en el que en Ruanda, un país de África Oriental, el odio y la diferencia étnica incentivada durante más de 100 años llegó a un punto crítico, que terminó con el exterminio de por lo menos 800,000 ruandeses pertenecientes a los tutsis, uno de los dos pueblos mayoritarios del país, a manos de extremistas del grupo rival, los hutus.
And all these stereotypes had their roots in colonialism. When the Germans came to Rwanda, and then later on the Belgians began measuring heights of Rwandans and noses of Rwandans. So the Belgians came up with what was how a Tutsi was supposed to look like, an image of a Hutu. So growing up, you hear somebody say, oh, he has a Tutsi nose, or he has, he's tall, so he's a Tutsi. So I was very exposed to that type of ethnic based conversation very early on.
Desde el fin de la época colonial en Ruanda, cuando fue reconocido por la ONU como país en 1962, el apoyo belga, la misma influencia que había regentado el país, sirvió para instalar gobiernos mayoritariamente hutus, que incentivaron el odio entre grupos en un periodo de más de 30 años antes del genocidio, y que incluyó guerras civiles y la creación de grupos paramilitares.
So it's not an overnight hate that took over people's hearts. It was a well-constructed, well-structured, well-thought-through political machine. And it, unfortunately, when it culminated in the killings of almost 1 million Tutsi people in 1994, there had been already massacres in the past that most people don't talk about or don't know even about. So I think it's something that already took time to get there, took time to organize.
Seeing as a kid, I never really thought too much about it. Of course, as I got older a little bit, being a teenager, that's when I realized how bad things were getting in the country. So one of the memories that I have when I was young in elementary school is when we were asked to stand up in a classroom. So being asked as the Tutsis and Hutus to stand up in a classroom. And that also never really made me think of anything. But when I was in junior high school, being bullied by a classmate because of, at the time the tension was so high, and throughout the country, the propaganda, hatred, against the Tutsi. At the time, it was really bad.
The teacher, like a Hutu teacher, would ask Tutsi students to stand this side and the Hutu students to stand this side. And then the teacher would begin telling the Hutus, the Hutu children, the Hutu classmates about how Tutsis were bad, they were not to be trusted, they were invaders, they were foreigners. So my Hutu classmates at a very early age were indoctrinated in anti-Tutsi propaganda and to see Tutsis not as like equal neighbors, equal citizens, but to see them as foreigners who deserved, to be treated as lesser than.
En los meses previos al genocidio, la tensión aumentó significativamente. La propaganda anti-Tutsi se intensificó a través de los medios de comunicación. Cuando ocurrió el asesinato del líder militar y político Juvenal Habyarimana, quien había llegado a la presidencia tras un golpe de Estado en 1973, la violencia desmedida contra los Tutsi estalló en tan solo un día.
Everybody listened to the radio. So, as a kid also, I used to listen to that radio too, like everybody else. So, and it used to scare me, but not to the extent where I felt, I was still young. I was still, young teen. So not to the extent where I thought there would be a genocide where they will want to kill and exterminate, the minority Tutsis. So, and at that time, I knew that I was a Tutsi, of course, but at the same time, it was not something that I never imagined that it would go through what it have gone through.
Durante 99 días se llevó a cabo el genocidio contra los Tutsis en Ruanda. La confrontación entre las etnias que históricamente habían ocupado este territorio alcanzó un punto de decadencia que destrozó por completo a un país joven.
Immediately, Tutsi, of course, brings to mind every single person who perished during those months. And it brings to mind family members, it brings to mind friends, it brings to mind neighbors, it brings to mind schoolmates, it brings to mind teachers, it brings to mind people I've never met but whose lives were violently and abruptly halted in 1994.
At the end of the day, we are all Rwandans. That we are all Rwandans with the same equal rights, with the same right to opportunities, educational opportunities, work opportunities.
And when I hear the word Hutu, I don't immediately get startled as I used to, because also Hutu is part of the people of Rwanda, the history of Rwanda. And I do my best to not connect Hutu extremists and Hutus as a general people coming from Rwanda.
Even though I wish the little child me did not experience what she experienced, at the same time, I don't know what she would have become if she if she had a normal upbringing, a normal life.
Ruanda tuvo que reinventarse bajo la promesa de eliminar por completo las divisiones entre Tutsis y Hutus para poder identificarse mutuamente en la sociedad. Les puso en una posición en la que tuvieron que transitar la tragedia y crear una nueva identidad, ser ruandeses.
I don't think we'll go back to where we came from, but I feel like that's why we tell stories. That's why we make sure we preserve the memory of what happened, so that we won't go back to where we came from. So I have a hope and I feel like I'm very optimistic of the future.